This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barton. Today we are going to be talking about part of this interview with Cliffe and Stewart. I don't know how to say their last names, but if you are plugged in at all with like apologetic sort of TikTok or YouTube, you probably know who I'm talking about when I say Cliffe and his son Stewart. So they were on Logan Paul's program, and I've gotten more through half of it, but I actually just squeezed this into the program, this conversation that they had about human value, and they talked about abortion as well. So, you know, that those things fascinate me, so I want to touch on it. And I'm glad that Cliffe has such a large platform to discuss these sorts of things, and for Logan Paul being open to it. I also want to discuss with you guys this clip, and it's going to be a long clip, and maybe you guys have already seen it, but Ted Cruz grilled, and I'm not happy with Ted Cruz right now, but this was great though. Ted Cruz grilled one of Biden's judicial nominees, and he's had some terrible judicial nominees, but one of them actually allowed a child serial rapist into a woman's prison and even respected his pronouns. So, very sick, sad world kind of stuff. And when you keep seeing things like this, and how much our world is devolving into this madness, it makes it so evident that Joe Biden should not be the president anymore. And he certainly should not win. I don't want him to win. By the way, did you know Ohio might not even have him on the ballot? Very interesting stuff. I'll mention it right after I encourage you guys to go to blackteanews.com. Check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support. I appreciate it. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can do super chats. But the best way to donate is to go to the website and do that directly. You guys can check out also different merch we have available at the store, like different t-shirts, like this pro-choice men are sus shirt. Got some other stuff as well that you guys can check out there. So go ahead and go to the store, pick up something. You guys can also check out different books that I have available. I have 18 available. 2 are nonfiction, the rest are fiction. So I got lots of books you guys can check out. If you go to Black Tea News, there's a merchandise page, and at the top it'll take you to my book website. There's a banner. But if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, there should be a link to that takes you to like an Amazon page that has all my books on there. So go ahead and check that stuff out. So I do not have any funny things for you guys today. So maybe this is funny. Joe Biden might not be on the Ohio ballot. Now, I don't suspect that Joe Biden is going to win in Ohio at all. He didn't win. Well, Trump won in 2016. He won Ohio. And man, my sister was friends with somebody who worked for Hillary, and some parts in Ohio was just rough for them to go try to convince people to vote for Hillary Clinton. Like, people gave her really kind of rough time, just like in some areas you go in like Detroit or something in Michigan, people are going to be really rough time if you're going to, say you're out there trying to convince people to vote for Trump. So they just kind of swapped war stories and didn't allow their political differences to get in the way of their friendship. But hello, chat. I see someone's watching from South Carolina. Hello, all, everybody popping in. So anyway, I don't suspect that Joe Biden is going to win Ohio, but to not have the top person on the ballot, it's not great for the down ticket. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's good that he won't be on the ballot. Maybe that'll be better for the down ticket. Who knows? He's so bad. But you might be asking why. So, long story short, the Democrat convention where they nominate the person who's, you know, in their party or whatever, they're not having that convention until after the deadline of when it's supposed to be done. And so in the past, or what people would expect to be some kind of remedy, would be the legislature would just make some kind of law change, an exemption or something. And apparently the legislature doesn't feel all that inclined to rush to help the Democrats, which, can you blame them? You know, after the lawfare kind of stuff and trying to kick Trump off of ballots in different places, and, you know, sicking the law against, you know, the electors and other stuff like that, if there's an opportunity, the law is on their side. The law is on the side of the Republicans. The Democrats could just, you know, I don't know how inconvenient that would be. It seems like it would be terribly inconvenient, but what can you do? You don't want to leave your your party leader off of the ballot. So whatever bylaws you have to change, whatever meetings you have to do to come together to move the date, just suck it up and do that. But the legislature doesn't feel all that inclined to be like, yeah, we're going to hurry up and fix this problem that you all decided to create for yourselves. So there's some, you know, media trying to paint it as the, like, attorney general is just rogue or something, and not it's just, I don't know, picking sides or whatever. He's like, no, this is the law. This is the law, and I have to follow the law. And election integrity on the front end is just as important as it is on the back end. So if you guys keep screaming about election integrity and threats to our democracy, all this kind of stuff, when there's an opportunity to follow election law, yes, we're going to follow election law. So you guys have some time, limited time, but you can fix it yourselves, or the legislature will have to do something. But again, the legislature is not feeling it, and you can't blame them. They don't have that kind of obligation. You can say maybe they should, and maybe they're playing politics. But again, the law is on their side in this matter. They don't have to do it. So it's a kind of a little tasty, you reap what you sow, going on in Ohio. So the Biden campaign is confident that they're going to still be on the ballot, but I don't see why they allowed themselves to be in that kind of mess anyway. But it's just a little funny. So that's what's going on. Biden could maybe not be on the ballot. It's just so interesting. I don't know why you'd set yourself up in that kind of situation. But again, he's not going to win Ohio. If he's not going to be on the ballot, maybe they'll just turn into a big thing and complain. And, you know, if it was more of a swing state that they had a better chance of maybe winning, like if he was going to be left off the ballot in Pennsylvania or something, I'd be sweating bullets, you know, or Wisconsin or Nevada or Arizona. But Ohio, Biden is not taking that at all. Okay, before we get into this long video with Ted Cruz, I wanted to draw some attention to a couple of border videos and the craziness that's going on there. There's so many people from not Mexico coming over across our border, and there's plenty of other countries these folks could have stopped in and stayed in. And my heart goes out to people who want to come to the US, because it's great here. I think it's the greatest country in the world, but you got to come here legally, and we have to know who's coming over here. But this is a pretty remarkable video.
Where are you guys from? What country?
Pakistan.
Pakistan.
India.
India. Where are you from?
Turkey.
Turkey?
Yeah.
Turkey. Okay.
India.
India. Where are you guys from?
Turkey.
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 Where are you guys from?
China.
China.
Ecuador.
Ecuador. Where are you guys from?
India.
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 India. Sagar Baba.
India. India.
India.
India.
India.
India.
India.
India.
Yes. India.
All India.
India.
India. Iran.
Iran.
You're all from Iran. Why'd you come?
No freedom.
No freedom.
Yes, in Iran. Iran is dangerous country.
Mhm.
No freedom for speak, for writing, for singing,
Mhm.
for thinking.
So, yeah, I wouldn't want to live in Iran either, you know. But yeah, those it's not like it's a little drive to get to the border, our southern border from China or India or Iran or Turkey. And did you notice a lot of those dudes are dudes, like grown men, not like little kids and moms crying? You know, a lot of these dudes are coming for economic opportunities, or I mean, they could be fleeing, I don't know, prosecution. Who knows what's all in these people's backgrounds? But you know, they're not legitimately refugees, and if they are, they don't have. There's other countries that they could have stopped and stayed in before they landed here at our border. So that's what's going on at the border. Pretty nuts. And then there was another video here of a man talking about this man paid the cartel $10K to come here.
Did you have to pay a cartel?
Yes,
How much?
around 10,000.
10,000.
Yes. In fact, the American people is right, completely true. Who come into this country? They don't know. Well, okay, I'm good, but how if they're not good? How they're killer, psychopath, else? No guarantee of that. Why, like no security, no security check, no background check.
No security check, no background check. You're worrying about who's crossing the border.
Yes. Of course, me because I'm like people are not look normal.
Did you have to pay a cartel?
Isn't this rich though? He's like, I'm good, I'm okay. But all these other guys, like, he's concerned about who these people are crossing the border illegally with him, because no one's checking the background checks, etc. So even the criminals who are, and they are breaking the law, you know, illegally crossing or whatever. I'm sure they're claiming refugee status or what, but you know, legitimately not. I don't think so. But even they're like, hey, your system really sucks, and there's some sketchy people coming in here. We're being lectured by the people breaking the rules. My sister said it's wild. It is wild. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely freaking bonkers. And it's only getting worse. I showed you guys some clips of Megyn Kelly talking to Bill Maher the other day, and they talked about the border a little bit, and he tried to downplay or said things were just as bad under Trump, and Kelly's like, Megyn Kelly, that's not true. And he seemed to pretty much, you know, concede very quickly on that one. He didn't push back as much as he pushed back on Hillary Clinton being an election denier, which was wild. But yeah, the numbers are crazy. There are things that Biden could do to curtail it, but he doesn't want to. I mean, maybe they wanted to slow down a little bit so the numbers aren't as wild as they have been. But at this point, no one should trust that he's going to fix the situation, because obviously he would have fixed it earlier if he cared at all, especially about the election. So anyway, let's move on. I'm going to talk about this Ted Cruz video, and I'm trying not to stop it really too much, because it is long. It's a long clip, but it's wild and worth hearing. And then we'll get to the Logan Paul Cliffe stuff. But Joe Biden, and he's had some wild nominees with some really bad credentials. And one thing about the Trump presidency and legacy that people say, like, oh, he appointed all these. Well, of course, he appointed who he appointed on the Supreme Court. And he also appointed a lot of different federal judges. Well, Biden has been also nominating judges, and a lot of them have been trash. So you get enough people in there, it kind of disrupts the balance and undoes what, you know, Trump did to a degree. And since Trump did a lot of things by executive orders, Biden undid a lot of good stuff there too. So in the second term with Trump, I would like to see him have some more long-lasting legislative victories rather than just, you know, I'm going to go and be a dictator on day one, as he joked, and just start signing stuff because, you know, people challenge him on a lot of that stuff, and you have to be in the courts and whatnot. But also the next guy, if he's bonkers or, you know, just decrepit in the mind, and somebody else comes in because they're senile and, you know, they push through all this kind of crazy policy, they can undo a lot of the good. So Trump needs to have a better long-lasting impact rather than, you know, the glitz and the glamour of Trump did this, Trump did this, Trump. We got to make some more impactful decisions. But this is a big reason why Joe Biden, it's very dangerous for him to be president again. We've already looked at the border situation. That's really bad. Economy is really bad. But these judges, some of them are just awful. So Ted Cruz, who I'm not too happy with, because maybe I'll rant about it a little bit later if I have a little bit of time. But I already talked about it, but then I didn't talk about it again the way that I wanted to talk about it yesterday. I doubt I'll have time today, but this he did. It was great. So calling these people out. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video.
Well, Judge Netburn, I want to continue on this line of questioning. In your court, what matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology?
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
Well, my political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology. This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole, but then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago, you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're
Yes,
asking me?
the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision.
I asked you a
based on what
question.
the law
I asked you a
is.
question.
I know I said I was gonna not say anything, but the facts is that he's a 6'2" serial rapist. So who obviously can penetrate people with penis. So what other facts do you need? So what's crazy to me is that I've seen a lot of debates and had conversations with people about men and women's spaces, and I'm against it, and I'm against it to a higher degree than even some people on the right, because I'm like, no, I don't even care if you transition and you look kind of passable. I mean, the reality is, if you can pass and you go to the bathroom real quick and no one's none the wiser, who's going to bother you? Realistically, I guess, what really can you do about it? But some people, it's like, well, if you're a famous trans person, we know you're trans because you told us. You told us that you're a man. You just like to look like a woman. I'm not validating you because you spent a lot of time and money. How are you that much different than somebody else who didn't have the time and the money and the resources to chop themselves up in the appropriate manner? The principle doesn't change for me. So I'm more of a stickler than most people on the matter. But people will go beyond using the bathroom at the airport. They'll want the locker room access. There was the YMCA case where there was a girl who, was disturbed by a dude in there, and he was a big fella, and she was a little white girl, not like tiny white girl. She was, I think around 18 or something, or maybe 17. She was still a minor. And then they, like, the town or folks tried to act like she was the bad person. And then there was a news report talking about, like, she transitioned, and so, yeah, it was really awkward watching the news people. And then Redux, they do a lot of stories on stuff like this. They went through this trans person's social media, and man, there was some disturbing stuff about in there, especially like things about little girls. And one of the things the minors was concerned about is her sister goes in that bathroom, in that locker room, to change when she swims. So how are they supposed to be comfortable with this dude who's also a pervert? But I mean, they wouldn't have known that at the time, but that's just the facts of the case, being in there. So people extend it to the locker rooms and spas and other stuff like that. But people also go with the prisons. And many of these prisons, the percentage of the men who identify as women, who have some kind of sexual perversion in their criminal history, is quite high. And I can understand why they don't want to be with the men. And the trans activists will say, well, it's more dangerous for them to be with the male population. Well, if you rape little boys, it tends to be very dangerous when you're with other men, because they don't take kindly to that stuff. And no, you might not be safe. Prison isn't necessarily a safe place. But why don't you care about the women who are less safe, who should not be subjected to your presence? So I've had a lot of conversations. I've seen a lot of advocates pretend like it's not a big deal. Like, oh, it's really the men, the cis men that are so dangerous. stop it. If there's something wrong with you to the point where, one, you're landing in prison for some reason, and you decide that you're mentally imbalanced enough to say that you're the other gender, part of it might be just because you're trying to get into a cushier, safer prison. But if all of a sudden you're the top dog, you're putting the women at an inconvenience. And that's what it is a lot of the time. Oh, you're afraid to race against other dudes. You're not man enough to do that. So you go run against the girls. No, I really feel like a woman. Then you can feel like a woman and race with the men. And there was a state, I think in Oregon, maybe. I'm not sure if it was Oregon, but there's a story going around recently of a boy who just won the state championship, and the crowd booed him after he won. But it shouldn't be like that at all. It's just going to get worse under Biden, because he did make those changes to Title IX. Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting. Let's go back to it.
Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order, because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, the beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical." Have you dealt, in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
You also wrote, "The BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown." I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women, and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault, I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered. I think you're a radical, and I think you have no business being a judge.
Judge Netburn, there was an opportunity during your exchange with Senator Cruz that you were attempting to offer a response relative to the conditions under which this petitioner was unsafe in the facilities in which she was being held. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to finish that response.
So the facts that were presented to me and what I relied on to make my decision were that the petitioner had engaged in no violence, no physical violence, no acts of sexual violence whatsoever while in custody. All three wardens who supervised the petitioner requested that she be transferred to a women's facility because of her serious medical needs. In addition, the Bureau of Prisons' longtime medical provider testified at a 2-day hearing in my courtroom and recommended that the petitioner be transferred because of her serious medical needs. And the last thing I'll say is that the Transgender Executive Council, which is the body that makes decisions on behalf of transgender transfer requests within the Bureau of Prisons, never said that the petitioner could not be transferred, and never, ever said that she couldn't be transferred because of any risk of violence. What the Transgender Executive Council repeatedly said in denying the request was simply that she needed to maintain her hormone levels. That was the repeated justification for the denial of transfer. But the petitioner had reached full female hormone levels before even being incarcerated. At the time, the district judge in Indiana who sentenced the petitioner requested that she be placed in a women's facility. Her hormones were entirely female at that point. And so the decision by the Transgender Executive Council to deny the transfer request based on this idea that it was only because her hormones needed to be consistent and stabilized, I found was a pretext, but they never once said she cannot be transferred because of violence. It was always based on this idea that her hormones had to be.
Thank you, Judge Netburn. Senator
Judge Netburn,
Padilla.
that's
Senator
directly contrary to what your
Senator, you
report
all
says.
have
That is
had
directly
no,
contrary.
no.
We're going to
No,
you're
there
going to
is
follow
no
up, and that's
follow-up.
how it
No,
works.
there is not.
That is
There
exactly
is-
how it works.
Look,
If you follow up, you didn't get extra time, and she just directly contradicted her own report. I'm just going to read her own words because it's exactly the opposite of what she said. Your own report.
Senators,
quote,
I gave both of you more time to finish your line of questioning. I allowed the witness to finish her. I allowed the witness to finish her response. I allowed the witness to finish her response. That is,
Hey, I understand that you're scared of the facts.
I have
Madam Chair.
Senator Padilla.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
she has an obligation to explain why she directly contradicted what she wrote in her report. She says in her report, the Bureau of Prisons' claimed penological interest is in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. She just told you the Bureau of Prisons didn't say there was a concern about sexual violence and trauma. Those are directly contradictory. And why are you contradicting what you wrote in your report?
And what are you trying to hide? I believe I have the floor.
No, wait, point of
I
order.
believe
Senator
I have
Padilla.
the floor.
Senator Padilla.
Are you going to let her answer that question?
Senator
or you
Padilla.
don't want her to answer that question?
Senator
You're
Padilla.
afraid?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Senator
Colleagues.
Padilla.
Afraid of the answer to
This
that
is
Colleagues.
no
Cover-up.
Are
Senator
you afraid
Padilla.
of the answer to that question?
Senator
Colleagues.
Padilla.
So yes,
My
you are
time.
afraid of the answer to that question.
Senator Padilla.
Please hold
Clearly,
my
you're
time.
afraid of the answer to that question.
This is also a bit of a circus, man. Oh, you know what? We didn't talk about the AOC Marjorie Taylor Greene and what's the black woman's name? I can't think of her name. Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about someone's eyelashes, and she said something about her butch body, and it was a hot mess. And maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. I just thought of it. I think that happened in the midst of me kind of being off, so I didn't address it last week because I didn't have a full week. But anyway, to grow up and be a man. First of all, you're a man. You're never not going to be a man. You're still 6'2", and you still have a penis. To just try to pretend like fully a woman because of whatever hormonal levels, your bone density is what it is. Obviously, the height is an unusual height for a woman. If he does try anything with the women, what are they going to do? And if you say, well, they haven't reoffended, what, while in a male prison? Well, I assume it's kind of probably harder to victimize other men, but he likes smaller prey. So these people, These people are sick. These people are sick. Okay, anyway. Let's move on. While I'm finding my clip that I want to address, I will mention again while I'm upset with Ted Cruz. So I did a video the other day talking about his IVF bill that he made with Katie Britt, and I did an article about it. So there's an article black2news.com. And so essentially they are saying that if a state decides to ban IVF, which I don't know that there's a movement to do that at all, then they will strip the state of Medicaid funding. So there's lots of issues with IVF. I'm not saying that there's a totally there's no way to pull it off in an ethical manner, but the way in which we go about it with having multiple embryos and the genetic testing, which leads to some eugenics and embryos being discarded or basically permanently frozen or donated to science or maybe donated altogether to an unrelated genetic parents, and to rob the children of their sort of natural right to know their parents, it isn't good. And I don't like the direction the Republicans are going in, but I compared it to back in the day when Ted Cruz was fighting on behalf of Hobby Lobby, and Hobby Lobby, they didn't want to provide birth control that would make it so that a fertilized egg wouldn't implant. And you don't know for sure when you take the Plan B. It's supposed to be like a precaution, but it could possibly, something like Plan B or in Plan B and stuff, but they didn't want to provide those certain kinds of birth control to women because they considered that to be taking a life. And so they were fine providing other birth control, but just not that. So they were going to be fined because of the Obamacare laws, and they didn't have an exemption. And so they had to go to court. Supreme Court ended up ruling in their favor for religious liberty, and it was a big win. And Ted Cruz was like, oh, this is great for religious liberty. So I thinking about that, I'm like, they fought so hard for Hobby Lobby, advocating for them. You could say it was a religious liberty issue or whatever, but Hobby Lobby at the end of the day didn't want to create some kind of environment that would possibly make it so that these embryos met some kind of circumstance where their survival was going, well, there was no survivability. So Ted Cruz saying now, like 10 years later, that they're going to strip healthcare for millions of Americans if the state decides that the cost of IVF is too high and it takes maybe too many lives to be feasible for the state to continue doing it. They're going to just strip away people's healthcare. And the more that I thought about it, just made me upset, so more upset. And even thinking about it after I wrote my article, and I also did a TikTok video. I think I put it out early yesterday morning. I also put it on Facebook. I put it on Twitter too, but it took forever to upload. I didn't even know if it was going to upload on Twitter. But I started thinking about someone who I knew had a high risk pregnancy, and all of a sudden they lost their Medicaid. And it was like an error on the part of like the government or whatever, with the when they were evaluating the income of the family. But all of a sudden they didn't have the Medicaid and they didn't know what they were going to do. And they needed to go to the doctor because, again, it was high risk pregnancy. They need to be monitored a lot. And the idea that Ted Cruz just thinks it's okay to strip the healthcare of a mother like that, if the state said, hey, we're not going to do IVF, it just really, really annoyed me. So anyway, I'm going to maybe see Ted Cruz at an event next month. We'll see if I get to say anything, but there's going to be different roundtables for like evangelicals and pastors and ministers and stuff. So I told my family, said, I'm going to have a lot to say at that. event. So many things to say about different topics. So anyway, let's move on to this conversation with Cliffe and Stewart and Logan Paul. And so this where we're going to start is about kind of midway through ish for the interview. And so they started talking about human value and got to abortion. I think it's important to listen to this section first when they discuss human value before they get to the abortion part. Because there's something relevant that I was kind of talking to the screen when they were mentioning abortion. I'm like, but you just said this, you just said this, you just said this. So I think it's an interesting conversation, and I'm glad that Logan is having it with Cliffe and Stewart. And I'm glad that Cliffe is, has such a large platform. He's such a eloquent speaker when it comes to the Bible and your relationship with God. And there's so many comments I see on their videos that say, you changed my life. You changed my life. And I appreciate their ministry. But I think for the most part, they do a good job responding to Logan's commentary. There's other things that I would have added or said, but which I will add and say now, I guess, at this point. But without further delay, here we go.
Is this truly just intellectual doubt, or is this emotional because my dad, or because the gay issue? Like, that's all emotional. Or is this volitional because I want to live a certain way and God tells me that he has to run my life, I want to run my own life? Like, is it a mix of all three, or do you think this is purely just intellectual?
I think no, it's not intellectual, because what Mike said, I think, is accurate. I think there's a level of science that can explain what is going on here.
Yeah.
I also think there's a level of magic that can't explain what's going on.
Hey, stop swearing. That's twice in one
Sorry.
sentence. I turned it off specifically for this episode, not to interrupt.
I think life is about balance. I think the universe is about balance. That's a balance that makes sense to me. That's a balance I kind of have to accept, because, man, stuff is confusing. The world is confusing.
Sure.
To answer your question, I think it's two-pronged. I think again, I'm just gonna be honest here. I feel like I can be honest with you guys. I feel like no matter what I say, you'll still accept me, please.
You better believe it.
Please. One is intuitively. I told you I grew up Christian. My mom would take me to church. She put me in, what's it called? PSA. It was like the PSR, the after school religious program for like young people. Man, I was like 7, 8 years old. Just had like an icky feeling being in this class. And they were preaching the word of God and the Bible, and we were singing these songs. Like, I could still say the Our Father prayer. I got baptized and everything, but like, I just had like at 7, mind you, I don't know what the world's comprised of, what experiences I'll live. I have no preconceived notions about any of this. And I believe a child's intuition is extremely valuable. I think there's a lot of merit in what a child feels. They're a blank canvas. What they see and experience is not rooted in any sort of inherent bias. You're solely based on feeling. I think that is an indicator that's important for me. I asked her to take me out of the classes, and I wanted to stop going to church, and she
probably wanted to do something else. You're a kid. You probably wanted to go out and skateboard, and so you were pissed that you were in.
It wasn't a feeling of boredom. It was a feeling of, this doesn't feel right to me. That's what it was. Secondarily,
yeah, I wouldn't have took him out to church. You make kids go to school. You make them go to church. That's not right, Christina. If you are rooted in, if it's about the truth, I'm going to assume people are religious because, well, some people do it because of social club activity kind of stuff, and it's not more of a truth thing. It's kind of more of a cultural, social club or whatever. But if this was the truth, and you believe it's the truth, in the opposite way, it would lead your child to damnation. You bet your bottom dollar we're going to church. We're going to church. So, but to that, I would say, children have all kinds of intuitions, and they're wrong. He's a dad to be. His child's in the womb. If you don't know can't remember what it's like growing up with other kids, you don't know other kids, You know, sometimes they're so sweet, so absolutely sweet, and sometimes they're just a terror. They can be. So and then I would also say, from a spiritual perspective, I believe you can have amazing interactions from a positive spiritual perspective with the Lord. Don't you think the opposite might be true too? That maybe there is some kind of darker force, maybe giving him that sort of inclination that you shouldn't be in the church, you shouldn't be learning these things. Now, there could have always been something wrong, I guess, with the actual class or the actual church. I don't know, but to say I was a kid and I didn't feel good about it, that I don't think that tracks. But we'll keep listening.
Like I said, some of the obvious things that make me go, this contradicts itself in a way that I'm uncomfortable to providing my faith to, is the gay marriage issue, is the abortion issue, is the, what was the other one?
There's a bunch
abortion.
of
I forget the other one.
intolerance of other people's religion.
That's it. Yeah, the intolerance. So to me, like, that's such an obvious, like, how can we claim moral soundness when we're alienating and isolating a lot of people in the world because of how they were born? That's where that's okay. It's succinctly, that's what I wrestle with.
Well, why are people valuable?
Well, before they get into the where are we valuable, Cliffe already did at this point, at least I believe, I saw some stuff on TikTok before I watched this, so hopefully I'm not misremembering things out of order, but he did address homosexuality, and he just talked about, why did God create us? How are we kind of ordered for our sexuality? And noted that the Bible talks far more about people being out of lockstep as heterosexuals and the sort of perversions you can get into, still opposite sex attracted, but you're supposed to be in a relationship, man and wife, procreating, having the kids. To do it out of order is not good. Like Cliffe will say, well, it's not in my nature to just be attracted to one woman. That's something that I have to crucify my flesh on, because God ordered me to, he purposed me to bring my flesh under, subjugation, and to be loyal and faithful to one person. And so there's different struggles that heterosexuals have and also different struggles that same-sex attracted people will have. So he did address it, and I'll let you go back and listen to that. But the abortion topic, it was interesting, but which they'll get more into, the conversation also about not respecting other people's, not respect, but that if you believe something differently, even though you're religious and you're sincere about that belief, that they still would not go to heaven because Jesus is the only way. And Cliffe did also address that. And he said it's a truth claim. Like other religions make truth claims, and it's not wrong or snooty for people to make truth claims. There was this girl I used to work with at a computer store, and she was Muslim, and she would talk about everybody else's religions, but she respected Christianity, and she, of course, was Muslim. And it was when she found out that I, didn't really believe Muhammad was a prophet, and, and said some stuff about that. After she asked me some questions, and I, she pressed me a bit, and I just, was honest with her. Then it was so awkward because she was, I suppose, hurt, but and defensive and whatnot. But I just thought it was interesting that she could talk about Hindus and everyone else all day long, but somebody disagreed with her, and then was, how dare you? So this idea that Christianity is so mean because it's exclusive, when other religions have different customs and traditions and things that you have to adhere to, it doesn't really make sense. So Cliffe did also address that point. I don't know why Logan can't absorb that or isn't wrapping his mind around that. I mean, he wouldn't allow everyone in his house, right? There's parameters to making it in there. So I don't understand why you can't accept that God has particular rules about who he wants to spend eternity with. And if you don't want to spend eternity with him, he's like, okay, I'm not gonna make this awkward for us for forever. But this conversation about humanity and who is valuable gets pretty interesting.
Why are people valuable?
From your perspective, why are people valuable?
I'm not sure people are valuable.
Good.
I wouldn't say that's entirely true.
But your whole argument has been gay people are valuable. Everybody's valuable.
I'm not willing to apply that absoluteness to the sentence that people are valuable. I think there are worthless people on the planet that don't provide or make themselves useful at all to the benefit.
Once again,
that's quite a judgment call.
Yeah, for sure.
Made, right? You
Sure.
said there are some people who are really worthless and there are people who add value to the planet. That's quite a judgment call, right?
It's also balance, I believe. I don't think I'm willing to say people are valuable.
What about
I'm not-
people?
I'm not
What
willing.
about people are valuable when they're valuable, and at other times they're not? Like making an absolute statement about someone's worth is extremely challenging. And going back to my always on empathy that exists because of my background, there was a time in my life where I was
Okay, he'll explain that in a second, but I just want to interject and point out that his issue with Christianity is, it says you can't live out your gay inclinations, you can't worship other gods, that's wrong to exclude people who don't believe other things, and abortion he mentioned, which was again fascinating to me, and we'll get to why. And then he says, I don't know that I won't say that all people are valuable, or that people are valuable. So why are you so pressed? Why are you so pressed? Now, I think he means that humanity isn't inherently valuable. And as Cliffe said, he is making a pretty big judgment statements. So I don't understand why you would judge God so harshly about the universe he made, and then also be like, yeah, you're not valuable. Humanity is not valuable. And you may be valuable if you meet certain parameters. Then I get to say that you're valuable. It's subjective. So God gives everyone an opportunity to come to him. And if you don't, he has an issue, because God gives everyone opportunity, but he does have some standards. It's pretty interesting.
valueless. In fact, I was a net negative for the world. I was a terrible, terrible person. And if you had looked at me at that time, you would have said, this person is a stain on society. He should be removed from it. I then took that experience, wrote a book about it, and started to help instruct people how to get out of that worthlessness. So to ever make an absolute statement about anyone's worth on this planet, whether good or bad, is a mistake.
Like Adolf Hitler.
Mistake. He
Really?
if one thing had we've been through
Yeah, we have.
before,
we have.
I would
Sure.
slaughter him given the chance, obviously. Sorry, F Adolf Hitler. One simple change in his upbringing or his personal evolution could have pushed him in a completely different direction.
I'm unwilling to sit here and say people are valuable, knowing there's murderers, legit moral sin criminals out there. Like that's a blanket statement.
If you want to remove murders and
okay, so put an asterisk next to people are valuable. Do humans let's do good humans. Can we get a little more specific with the sentence so
You
we
bet.
can move to the
I am
next?
convinced that you are.
So Cliff is about to say some good stuff, but the issue that I found was so interesting here about Logan, he's like, I can't find humans valuable as long as we have murderers and other stuff. But he's also can't get with Christianity, or he struggles because of their views on abortion. So if you know me a little bit, you probably knew where I was going with this, but if you could get rid of all the murderers, wouldn't just, snap your fingers, improve the world, they're all gone. Wouldn't all the women who've committed an abortion be gone too? And you can say, well, oh no, it's legal. Well, murder's a legal term. Well, it's illegal some places in this country, but I would refer to murder as an unjustified killing. And think about the reason that you might have had one, or someone who had one. If you wouldn't apply that same standard to a child outside of the womb, I would say you didn't have a very justified reason. I would say you didn't have financial. Would you kill your child outside the womb for financial reason? Mm-mm. You wouldn't. So, and pro-life organization, some pro-life organizations would say, oh, they don't meet the mens rea to qualify. They don't have that kind of guilty mind because they don't actually know that the baby is anything more than a clump of cells, or society has convinced them that they're meaningless clumps of cells, etc. And actually, I saw Equal Rights Institute do a video about that. And that's pretty much what all the major pro-life organizations pretty much say. But at the same time, I also listen to different abortion lives, and people are like, I don't care if it's a day before the child is born. If the mother wants to have an abortion, she should be able to do that because it's her body. Fetus the fetus. I think it's not accurate to say that women are unaware, completely unaware, that there's something human and alive inside of them. They don't hold it to the same value, sure, as a born child because of what society has convinced them to. But what's interesting about that, though, is that pro-life people will say that, well, we can criminalize the abortionists and the doctors because they know. Well, they may know the anatomy certainly better than the mothers. However, aren't they also victims of the society that they live in as well? Haven't they been conditioned to encourage abortion or to belittle it and to prioritize the will of the women and to see it as a bodily autonomy issue and to respect the wishes of the woman? The reason why we shouldn't criminalize women and doctors is because it's not currently illegal in some places. And you can't just arrest people for things that are not, that's the real reason. But if it was criminalized, and it should be, anyone who does it, whether the abortionist is the doctor or the woman taking a pill, should face justice. And the mens rea argument, I don't see how that tracks with women who have already carried a pregnancy to term. I don't know if all states have their abortion stats or whatever. You can't necessarily just find everything at the CDC because some states don't report. But I've looked into my state's abortion numbers, and there's quite a few women who've had abortions after they've already carried several children to term. So to think that they're unaware that there's something human and alive within them, well, they certainly wouldn't be okay if someone else killed their baby through some kind of accident, or if they slipped them a pill of a wanted child, then it's different. So they're not culpable. I can't buy that. And maybe you could argue some of them aren't, but that's something the justice system would have to go through. Not everyone get a blanket pass because society has deemed it so. And I know I'm giving you abolitionist sort of rhetoric, but they're the ones who make sense on this issue to me. Like, think about slavery. We pass the laws, we got 13, 14 Amendment stuff. Would you say that if someone still decided to kidnap people and force them to be their slaves after slavery's gone outside of the US, so the Constitution's ratified all that stuff, if someone still decided to do that, would you still think they shouldn't be criminalized because they're like, well, society has conditioned them to believe that these black people are less than, that they're supposed to be by just biologically that's how God designed them to be subservient, that they're not really persons. It's going to take some time, some years, maybe some decades before we can get to the point where society accepts the fact that black people are persons. Would you argue that? Or would you say, man, this was a really evil thing, we need to stop it now? I'm so glad the laws are changed. And you know what the law is now, so you break the law at your own peril. So if you decided that all the murderers were going to be gone, would you still be, would someone you know and care for and love for, with someone you care for and love, would they still be here if God just snapped his fingers? If God just got rid of all the sinners, all the evil people, would you still be here? Would you still be here? So Christianity, which, Cliffe addressed quite a bit, is about God's grace, that we all sin and fall short, but God is also just. So the sin that we commit, there needs to be some kind of punishment for it. But because God is equally loving and equally just, he already paid the debt. So Christianity is believing that Jesus died to cover your debt of sin. And then you don't have to go to hell and face that punishment. That's what it is. So saying that you can't rock with it because you can't get past the views on abortion, which I think it's obvious that the Bible is against it. I wrote a book about it. It's on Amazon. It's, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. But the reason why, and Cliffe gets into this, we'll get to his answer. The reason why the Bible doesn't say anything about abortion itself, but it's wrong to murder. In my beginning, my existence as a human being began at conception. And if it's wrong for someone to conspire to kill me today, and it'd be wrong if my mother conspired to kill me as a toddler with a pediatrician, why would it suddenly be okay to conspire with an abortionist to end my life? I'm the same human being the entire time. I'm the same human being who God knitted together in my mother's womb, who God called me before I was formed. So it's very interesting. Let's listen a little bit more about this conversation about human value.
you're valuable not because you got a lot of viewers or a lot of likes. I'm convinced you're valuable not because you got a large bank account. I'm convinced you're valuable because you're a precious human being created in the image of God, who God loves. That's why you're valuable. And I'm convinced that when you were living on the streets and homeless and a cocaine addict, you were valuable because you're a human being created in the image of God. But if you take God out of the picture, you're up a creek without a paddle when it comes to explaining why is anybody innately valuable? And the sick thing is you and I live in a society that says, oh, no. It's your likes, it's your views, it's the size of your stock portfolio, it's the style of car you drive, the house you live in. That's what makes you valuable or insignificant. It's your ethnic heritage that makes you valuable or less valuable. That is all a crock. It's all a lie according to the scriptures, according to Christ. You're valuable, you're precious because you're a human being created in the image of God. And God's created you for a purpose. I mean, just go to a cemetery. Look at the gravestone. Birth date, death date. What's in between those two dates? A dash. Is that really what life is about? A dash from the hospital you're born in to the hospital you die in? If that's true, we are not valuable. But if we're created by God for a purpose, to love and worship him and to love and serve each other, if we're created to live for eternity in heaven, by gollies, we are really innately valuable.
Then why does God create murderers and scumbags?
He doesn't create people he creates people to love and respect each other, but he's limited his power by giving us a free will. And I'm real glad we have a free will, because if your wife just loves you because of who you are, pretty shallow, pretty trivial. But if she really loves you for who you are, that's beautiful. If she's really committed to you till death parts us, that's beautiful. And that's what you long for. It's what I long for. It's what we all long for. That type of depth of love and friendship with each other.
I would say that's why humans are valuable. If I had to answer the question with an asterisk, including just excluding the mortal sin people, I would say we're valuable because we mean something to each other.
But you earlier talked about forgiveness. And you talked about our messed up society and all the breakdown morally, all of the shouting at each other because there's no objective morality. We all just disagree on what's right or wrong. I think you're appealing to some type of source. You call it God, but it's something transcendent where you are ushering in a type of value to human beings where it's, I think people should forgive each other. I think people do have equal value and shouldn't be shouting each other down because we're all created in God's image. And historically, that's what changed the world. Like when this atheist was, he got a Pulitzer Prize, I think, for writing this book. What is it? No, it's not A Brief History of Time. Whatever the title is, it's an atheist writing it. And historically, he just documents how the world totally changed when people started to understand that every single human being has value because they're created in the image of God. This is an atheist writing this. That totally changed my perception of things because I was where you are right now in thinking, oh, no, it's just a subjective thing. And I'm going to say who has value and who doesn't. And so when a college student says, like, I have no value because I'm still in college. We get this all the time. And I'm going to have value when I start making money. It's like, well, you're going to look at people as dirtbags all the time because the people who have less than money than you is a caste system.
Dude, it's not. I am not the person assigning value to XYZ. But I am a person who will tell you it's really hard for me to assign value to a person who murders.
Sure, yeah.
That's hard.
Same here.
Yeah. So like the blanket statement of like humans are, bro, I think there's.
Well, yeah, you could find an outlier for any.
Again, he doesn't mind people who murder people who he thinks are not quite people, though. So he is assigning a lot of value. You know, even people who he does quite value, because they get into the abortion topic, and ask the question about, well, his wife. What if his wife wanted to have one, and he wouldn't want her to? But at the end of the day, they're still saying things like, well, it's a woman's choice, it's a woman's choice, it's a woman's choice. So there are circumstances where he thinks that if someone takes a life, then that person still has value. So he's not being consistent here. So I just think having such a problem with Christianity, because the views of, yeah, it's wrong to take a human life. We're all made in the image of God, you should be kind and loving to your neighbors. By the way, your preborn neighbor counts as well. That is the thing that's keeping you from Christianity, and you can't say that all humans are valuable because there are murderers. All this doesn't really track. All this really doesn't track.
A situation, I think.
Fully agree.
You know, do you feel buttoned up there? Is there anything else before I ask my next, or do you want to ask something? Because I have a less like just.
Are you gonna hit the abortion one or no? You brought that up.
Let's talk about it. I wasn't. You reminded me. No. It's another thing. I'm just, I mean, it's the classic like 12-year-old is, and a subset of Christians say she can't have an abortion because it's against the Bible, or it's illegal in their state, and which I think is another issue. I mean, the intertwining of church and state is a little bit difficult for me to get behind, because even though you may be an American who lives in Texas, perhaps you're not a Christian, perhaps you don't abide by Christian rules and beliefs, and so it's not legal in Texas to get an abortion, but partially because the Bible said so, and when the Constitution was written, it was heavily intertwined in that document. And so that's another thing I thought it was a little hard for me to be able to get behind. I really believe in women being able to make choices with their own body, and I don't think a panel of men should have any say in that.
Right.
Roe v. Wade was decided by a panel of men.
When we walked in, that you're here to see the ultrasound of your child.
Yep.
Okay. Last generation.
Yep. It
was only 35% of the U.S. was pro-life.
Yep.
Now it's 51%. That's a pretty. It's because of ultrasound.
Is that true?
That's true. It's a pretty drastic change because of ultrasound.
Insane.
And I think right then and there, you see obviously the baby being torn apart. You see the baby having emotions, back to your point.
Yep.
And you ascribe value to that fetus or pre-fetus. And so when I hear, for example, over in the Netherlands, I first heard it and I got excited when I heard, Down syndrome, they're finding a type of cure. Well, I found out they're just aborting all Down syndrome babies.
Oh, that's a cure.
That's a cure, right? That's some type of cure.
Yeah.
And it's ascribing zero value to Down syndrome babies.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bunch of Down syndrome kids in our church who are the happiest, most joy-filled, most life-giving human beings imaginable. And so that's when you play fast and loose, I think, with human life. And again, if you don't ascribe value something outside of, they're healthy, or they're not going to be a suck on society. If it's something beyond that, where it's, no, they have value no matter what, because they're created in God's image. They reflect even God's image. Then you can't end that life.
It's very funny you bring up the ultrasound thing. We got the ultrasound of my unborn baby girl yesterday.
Congrats.
And by the way, you're absolutely right. I'm super pro-life. I always will be. I
He's
think
not.
It's weird for anyone to decide what anyone else does with their body. That's insane.
Well, let me.
Let me.
He keeps saying that phrase. I don't think he knows what that word means, apparently. But no, he's definitely not pro-life if he thinks that women should be able to abort. That is pro-choice. Pro-life means that you're against abortion and euthanasia, but mostly people talking about abortion. And the reason why is because you believe that they have the right to life, which is a right to not be killed. So if you are pro-choice, you believe the woman has a right to choose abortion. So you are not pro-life. Maybe you could say that you personally wouldn't do it, and you don't think it's a good thing to do, but you obviously think that women should be able to do it. That's not pro-life.
I just want to
I just want to go. I saw the ultrasound yesterday. 21-week-old baby. And I saw fingers. I saw hands. I saw a baby. I saw a little human. Personally, seems a little up to abort a 21-year-old weak baby. 21-year-old weak. 21-week-old baby.
Old baby.
The ultrasound makes it super, super real. But in those odd instances and unfortunate instances where, like, again, it's always you'll always have people pushing back on the conversation. Or even like say someone determines they're not responsible enough. And that's a responsible decision in itself. Maybe I'm not at a point in my life where I'm willing to take care of a child because I don't have the means, the resources, the finances. I'm not stable enough in my own life to be able to bear this baby. That's
not a responsible decision. That is, you wouldn't make that same kind of lot. You wouldn't justify killing a child outside of the womb based on the fact that you can't take care, or you may do it, make that justification and kill them, but you're going to jail. That is an unjustified reason. And you can, at that point, give the child up for adoption if you really feel like you can't take care of them. So it's not a good excuse. It's just not. And after a certain point in time, you can't just be like, I don't want my parental responsibilities. You know, when there's like a time window of where you can, you know, safe harbor laws where you can drop a baby off at a fire station or something like that. But what if you're just like, man, I've had this kid for 2 years. I'm not really feeling it. I miss the days when I could go out and party and stuff. I'm going to just, you know, chuck him, you know, in a river or something and go about your business. You can't do that. So that's a big leap, by the way. That's what people always do in these abortion conversations. They'll be like, well, what about the 12-year-old who was, you know, sexually assaulted? And they'll jump to, well, what if they just feel like they can't afford a kid or don't want a kid? That's you're talking about like the less than 1%, and all of a sudden just jumping to lifestyle issues of like the result of consensual sex. That's a big leap, man. Really big leap.
I think responsible and like maybe a little bit of an ethical decision because you've deemed you're not able to raise this baby yet.
But even your statement right there semi contradicts your original statement, which is that you shouldn't be passing any judgment on when abortion is or isn't okay because the woman should have the whole say. Like in your original statement, if a woman says, I want to abort this baby, it's her body, her choice. So we all abide to that. So we should have we shouldn't even be having this discussion based on your original.
Well, that's what it is. No. We should be having this discussion because it's all a discussion. I think at the end of the day, yeah, absolutely. I will always side with a woman who wants to do what she wants to do with her body. I believe that.
So if Nina came, sorry to murder your baby again for the third time today. If Nina came up to you today and was like, listen, like I'm having second thoughts here.
Yep. What I would do is have a prolonged discussion with her that I hope she'd be receptive to. And I think that's like healthy, you know?
Well, I mean, what else can you do?
No.
What,
I mean, I don't know, but like at the end of the day, what am I going to force her to
no, that's
carry
what I'm saying.
a child for 6 months? That's wild to me. Yeah, no, you're right. The ultrasound thing is interesting because I saw this baby and I did have a thought like, you know,
just for the record, should you force women who don't want to have the babies to like hold them down and make them like carry it all the time? No, I don't think that's the solution. But I do think that if someone decides, because you're already gestating the baby, you're already carrying the baby, if someone the abortion requires an initiation of force, an act of aggression, and they want legal immunity to do that and different resources provided to them to be able to make it happen. I think we should say, no, it's not legal to get these pills. No, it's not legal for a medical professional to do this to your child. And if they decide to do that, then they will face legal ramifications. So no, you don't have to hold someone down and make someone do something their body is already doing. You know, once you're pregnant, birth is going to happen, you know, one way or another. So it's not about holding someone else down, but it shouldn't be a choice for a woman to, well, I guess there's always a choice to choose to kill someone, to make the choice to use your body to end someone else's life. That's always a choice. The question is, why are we a society that doesn't seek justice for all persons? And you can say, well, it's not a person because of your belief system, because of your subjective standard. Perhaps you don't qualify everyone as persons. It's nothing new, but I'd rather you not get to pick and choose when I personally had value. So I when I came into existence, it's just my best interest for everyone to acknowledge that I should have human rights when my life began.
I'm pro-life, but like killing this thing is a little fricked up. if I were to like make that decision is wild. But you know, in the instances of the most unfortunate circumstances, based on your scripture, you're still unwilling to be okay with that decision of killing an unborn child, even if it was a product of.
The Bible never uses the word abortion. Okay? The Bible does say we're not to murder. And murder is killing motivated by selfishness, hatred, or revenge. Obviously, there's such a thing as self-defense, which is different ethically. So murder is killing motivated by selfishness, hatred, or revenge. All right, so then obviously the hard question is, when does human life begin?
Yeah.
Right? That's the hard question.
It's the question. For sure.
Now, in every major university hospital in the United States, if a body lying on an intensive care bed has brain activity and heartbeat, doctors and nurses are legally, medically responsible to do everything within their power to sustain that life. So between 6 to 10 weeks after conception, that quote little piece of skin in a woman's womb has both heartbeat and brain activity.
It has the credentials to merit what
Thank
we
you.
consider life. That
Okay.
makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, good. So then the difficult question becomes, well, what about before 6 to 10 weeks? All right. What is the difference between a 2-week-old fertilized egg, a 6-month-old fertilized egg, and you? I would argue there is no difference in kind. There is a difference in degree, obviously, of maturation. Different degree of maturation, no difference in kind. 100 times out of 100, that little fertilized egg is going to come down a woman's birth canal, never as an alligator, never as a chicken or a bunny rabbit, 100 times out of 100 as a baby, as a human life. So therefore, I would argue that before 6 to 10 weeks, even though there is no brain activity or heartbeat, you've got a human being there because there's no difference in kind, just in degree of maturation. So that is why I would be very, very hesitant to go down the abortion path.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I guess I'll always fall back on like, we can sit here on this couch and like talk as men about what we think about it, but man, like men making decisions for women like really irks me.
Yep.
The Christians haven't done a great job of helping out with adoption agencies and raising up these babies. Like, we still have to do a much better job. And when that's structured and organized, I think there's a great answer to it, even for the crack babies where the moms can't support the baby at all.
Yep.
There's no father.
Okay, let's.
Okay, so I have to call cap on Stuart though, because there's now people can always do better. People can always do better, but Christians do a lot, especially in the realm of adoption. There's plenty of people waiting to adopt, more people waiting to adopt than there are children available to be adopted. So adoption is a very hard process for many people, and I've known people who've gone through that process and have had to wait and wait and wait, and it's expensive and everything. So saying Christians need to do a better job, Christians do a lot. One time Allie Stuckey went into a big rant about all the things people do with pregnancy crisis centers and adoption and so on, and she's like, if you don't know, that's because you have not cared to look into these things. And that was a big rant she had after Roe v. Wade was repealed, and there were Christians saying, we need to have compassion for those who are hurting, and we're upset about Christians rejoicing. So she had a great rant about it. But yeah, I don't know how much they gave great answers there about abortion stuff in general, but plenty of people are doing a lot. And again, you could always do more. Some people don't care that you're doing anything. They're still gonna just try. Oftentimes, if people ask me or other people I've seen about like, what are you doing? What are you doing? How many kids do you adopt, etc., or how much do you give? And Are you going to raise up all these children? They really just want to find a way to demonize you personally so they can continue to uplift the thing that they want to keep legal. There are times where I'm like, okay, well, our church does this, etc. And I did this, etc. And people were like, well, it sounds like you're bragging. So I don't even try to engage in that kind of line of questioning anymore, because it's like people ask, how many children have you adopted? I'll respond with, how many do I have to adopt for you to agree to ban abortion? Because I've seen people ask, how many have you adopted? And they'll say 2. And like, well, why didn't you adopt more? There's never an answer that'll be good enough, because it's just a tactic. It's just a tactic. Again, Christians can always do more. The world can always do more, can always give more. Let's give more to help mothers rather than giving to Planned Parenthood. How come pro-abortion activists, you say something about abortion, they're like, I'm going to donate this amount of money to Planned Parenthood in your name? Or you could donate that money to a mother in need. But they're just trying to, I understand people are trying to get under my skin, but at the end of the day, it's not my money killing babies. That's you making a decision that God will judge you for. That's not on me. And I'm going to still try to convince people to not do this evil thing. So I'm going to call cap on what Stuart said. But another thing I'll say before I close this out is Logan Paul said we're men, talking about what women are doing with their bodies. If I decided to take my body and go drown a 2-year-old, we wouldn't say, well, she was just doing what she wanted with her body. There's some things that we don't do. When you start infringing upon other people's rights, then you have limitations. And so you can have this conversation as if there's only one person, but there's a person inside of the woman's body. So I don't like to have conversations pretending like the baby doesn't exist or doesn't play a role, and that we should just ignore that it's a conflict of rights issue. And the question is, how do we maximize the most liberty? But as far as men sitting around talking about this issue, he's the father of that child they're talking about. Men are the fathers. And if fathers aren't going to stand up for their children, I don't think I've said this many times, but if you're not willing to stand up for your children, you're not worthy of the balls between your legs. You're not. Like, stand up for your kids. Stand up for your kids. You have every right to stand up for not only your children, but your preborn neighbor. If someone was trying to kill me, was going around passing out a petition like, we want to make it legal to kill Christina, I would hope people would say, that's messed up. I'm not signing that. I would hope people wouldn't vote to do that. And I would hope that people would come together and stick up for their preborn neighbor who does not deserve to be killed. So anyway, interesting conversation. I'll have to watch the rest of that sometime later, but hopefully Cliffe said some things that have pricked his heart, and he'll ultimately make a change in his life. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream and run my site and all that stuff, so you guys can support. I appreciate it. And you guys can check out different merch on there, t-shirts and mugs and so on. And you guys can check out my different books that I have written, including my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, that is available on Amazon. And it touches, some things that Logan Paul was interested in and talking about. But I'd recommend that even if you're not very religious, you go ahead and check it out, because it has some, good logic stuff in there anyway. But it's always good to understand the position. Anyway, I see people who are atheists have to use biblical talking points anyway, because even there are people who literally will not believe that atheists actually don't believe in the Bible if they advocate that abortion is wrong. It's the wildest thing. But anyway, God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.